Hi, it's Cara Brown, and this is Watercolor Conversations. It's a place where I share my love of watercolor and my seeking, my teaching, my discoveries, the connections I see, and just in general what it's like to be alive at this time here on planet Earth. I hope that this meets a part of you that's longing to be met. Thanks for being here. Hello. Okay, in this episode, we are going to put to use the foundational pieces from the past 3, and in some cases 4 episodes. I call this 3D in a 2D world. It's essentially creating volume, a sense of depth, or the third dimension that our paper lacks. Whether we started with a camera or we're looking at life, our subjects exist in a 3-dimensional space. It's an optical illusion of sorts to paint such that it looks like you could reach out and grab the subjects of our paintings. This is what I look for in my own work. Does it live? Can I relate to it as if it were real? I want my subjects to appear as fully fleshed out as things in the real world as I can make them. Every time we pick up a brush, we are contending with the water and how it comes into play. As well, in order to make our work reflect the subjects we are painting, we call into service the guidelines of shape, shade, color. Light, that is shading, lights and darks, all plays an integral part in how we see and portray dimension. And if we want our background to provide a space for our subjects to come to life in, softening the edges of the shapes that surround our subjects tells a different and possibly more accurate story for the viewer's brains to read. In some sense, painting volume is no different than just painting, but by focusing on it, we can bring more life to our work. My dad had this expression. I'm pretty sure I shared this in the episode on the virtue of work, but it applies here too. If someone wasn't able to do things, if they weren't functional, if they were fumbly and unskilled, he'd say their hands were painted on. I didn't realize this until long into my adulthood, what he actually meant. I thought all those years that he meant they couldn't do anything because they had wet paint on their hands. But what he really meant was their hands were like those on a wooden doll, painted images on their body, not real separate appendages. This is exactly what we are attempting, to have those hands appear to come off the body as actual hands. Here are some of the places we've just been and how they apply to creating volume in our paintings. Shapes need both hard and soft edges. Round shapes need soft edges to read as real. I've painted enough curled petals and leaves, grapes, blueberries, apricots, and chocolate truffles to find that soft, graduated edges to our paint is what reveals roundness to our eyes. Dimension does not exist without light. Anyone who's been outside in what's called flat light in a blizzard knows this. It's hard to tell where you are in space without some contrast. We need to create this contrast, the darkest darks, bare white paper, and shades in between in order for form to reveal itself in our paintings. Out of focus surroundings for our subjects provides a sense of depth in the overall painting. By softening edges in the backgrounds, we place our subjects in a space that seems to recede from our subjects. When what we are painting seems like it's still just 2-dimensional, we get help from our reference images. How do I know this thing has 3 dimensions that I haven't yet created in my painting? We look at our reference images, shapes, shades, and colors to tell us what we need to do to our painting so that cluster of grapes or that plate of pastries or that glass vase with flowers in it has form. Seeing form is about relationship between hard and soft lines, between various shapes in our images, and the relationship between dark and light. Whatever lies next to that which is in our painting that provides us with context, that gives our brains the information to sense physical space. So when you have overlapping objects, when you have them touching each other, it creates that sense of this really lived in the world. It is possible to paint a single object in the middle of a white piece of paper and have it appear as though it has volume. But without those neighboring elements, such as the shadow that it casts on the surface it sits on, or another object that could be casting a shadow upon it, it doesn't appear as real or alive. It's a little bit more abstract and kind of like outer space, like the moon hanging in the sky. Many shapes in our paintings are fragments of objects, and without whatever is around them, they don't make much sense. A piece of a petal or a section of a grape on their own appear to be just an abstract shape, but once the rest of the painting shows up around it, the fragment becomes real. So evaluating why your painting may not be looking like much in its earlier stages might mean that you just need to withhold judgment until more of it has been painted. Here's some other things to think about when making your paintings look dimensional. This one is huge. Choose a reference image or arrange your still life in front of you such that the volume is easy to see. I find that a 3/4 view does this better than straight or profile, both which can flatten the object. Imagine a simple flower like a daisy, tilted slightly versus looking at it straight on or a straight side profile view. The orientation of the objects in our paintings get more real to us when we can see sort of more sides of them. Taking this a bit further, if your composition includes multiple examples of the object, it's great if they can have different perspectives. So a bunch of daisies can say a lot about how daisies are, the daisiness of daisies. Back, side, front, and 3/4 view all add to the picture. And the mind then fills in that kind of magical way what the daisy is, even if we don't know what it is. Get the nooks and crannies dark enough. Light doesn't find its way into the spaces in between objects. So paint those little nooks and crannies with so much paint. It doesn't have to be black, but generally it is dark, so that there's no sense of the paper shining through. That's my test, is can I see evidence of that white paper? If I can, I have an opportunity to make it even darker. Doing that will make those places recede and add a needed punch to your painting. I've started to say lately that paintings without good darks are like one big run-on sentence. Paintings need dark like writing needs punctuation. When there's a shadow on an object, paint the whole thing the lighter unshadowed color, if it has a color, including its markings like veins on a leaf or markings on a petal. Then when that layer is dry, glaze the shadow over it, all of it, the part that is in shadow, including what you've just painted. This helps that petal from looking like adjacent puzzle pieces, which can distract the viewing eye from seeing it as a whole shape, as a whole thing, rather. Carefully observe color. One of the things that can make things read like real is to really portray the blue reflections on things. Branches and leaves, horizontally oriented, reflect the blue of the sky. If you don't have white paper underneath that blue, it's not going to read as fresh and bright as if you had some yellow or a little bit of brown or something underneath it. So it really helps to tune into having the right color so that it can read. Then trust your eye. The logical brain will often intervene, having you paint things as you think they are rather than as they actually are. I notice this especially with lettering or other linear shapes that in our references curve or are at an angle. Lettering with a shifted perspective gets squished together. Square tiles become rectangles as they angle away from the viewer. Patterns in fabric change with angle and wrinkles on the fabric. These subtle details matter when making dimension read accurately, and it's also where our symbol reading and shortcut brains get in the way. I will include a link to this painting in the episode description, but look at a painting of mine called Fascination, which is a green glass tiled vase, I guess you'd call it. It's a spherical vase with some flowers in it. Every single one of the squares on that painting, on the object in the painting rather, were square. They were all square tiles. But as they go around the round shape, on the left-hand side, they get more rectangular in one direction, and on the right-hand side, they get both smaller and more rectangular in the other direction. It's fascinating. If you just sort of sequester your eye and look at just those other around the corner sections of that painting, you can see how I really worked to be faithful to draw them first and then paint them exactly as they looked in my reference image, which is what my eye saw in that moment. Step back as often as you can remember to and compare what you're painting to your reference, whether it's real life or your image. Look back and forth to find where your next move is. I taught myself to paint this way. I would prop my painting up and I would prop my paper printed reference image and I would go back and forth and back and forth and I'd say, okay, that whole area, it's kind of vague to me. What about my reference image have I not yet included in my painting? Be patient. It takes time to be able to see and to use your brushes and the paint and water in the way that you want. Time spent painting is all that's really needed. Because painting volume can be like magic. We're zoomed in, carefully, faithfully observing and painting the shapes, the lights and the darks, the colors we see in our reference, not really seeing the objectness of what we're painting. Then when we step back, we can be astonished by how what we've just painted appears to pop off the paper. How'd we do that? This brings back a memory when I was painting some pomegranates early in my painting life. I holed up all by myself in a friend's vacant house so I could really focus on my work. It took days of painting, hours and hours, to finish this painting of the pomegranates. When I thought it might be done, I set it across the room. I remember thinking, oh my God, if I got close to that, those blossom ends of the pomegranate would poke me. As always, try not to let yourself be stopped by impatience or frustration that can be our steady companion. Making things come to life on a sheet of paper is hard. Stick with it. Stop to see what you might do next. Trust me, it will make your painting come to life. And along the way to making your paintings, you end up learning to paint. Okay, that's all I have to say about this for today. In the next episode, I will share the strategies I've used in my own work to cope with the sections of my paintings that have had mind-boggling detail. It's so easy to get lost, but I've got some ways to find yourself again and your subjects. I'll see you over there. Until then, bye-bye.